If you're having trouble in College Football 26 or you just haven't played a football game in a while, don't worry, I'm here to help you. These are 10 beginner tips that you need to know. And if you don't want to miss out on all of the best College Football 26 tips all year long, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss any of these important videos. Number 1, Passing 101. These are the different types of passes you can throw. You can throw a lob pass by tapping the receiver's icon. This is best used for deep passes like streaks or routes that cross the field if the receiver has the defender beat by a substantial amount of yards. You can throw a touch pass by holding the receiver's icon for just a split millisecond, then release. The meter will fill up about halfway, and this is good for dropping the ball in between coverage. The last type of pass you can throw is a bullet pass, which you get by holding the receiver's icon all the way down. This is a faster, low trajectory pass. This is good for tight window throws and getting the ball out quick. Now here are the different types of catches you can do. You can do a catch and run by holding down the X button on Xbox or the square button on PlayStation. This is used when you're trying to catch the ball in stride and keep running to pick up extra yards. This is the type of catch you want to use when you have your defender beat, like on a streak over the top, or maybe a drag over the middle where you're trying to catch it and pick up as many extra yards as possible. The next type of catch is a possession catch, which you get by holding down the A button on Xbox or the X button on PlayStation. This is great for catching the ball in tight windows or in traffic because the receiver will try to possess the ball carefully and get down to avoid hits. This is also important to use on the sideline because it makes the receiver focus on the catch and focus on getting his feet in bounds. The next type of catch is an aggressive catch, which you get by holding down the Y button on Xbox or the triangle button on PlayStation. This is what you do when you're trying to catch a 50-50 ball. The receiver will go up and attack the ball at its highest point. This one's a lot riskier, but it's also high reward. The last type of catch you can do is a spectacular catch, which you get by holding down the LB or L1 button. This will give your receiver fancy one-handed grabs, not something you should do in traffic. Really, you should only use this if you're wide open and you're just trying to show out a little bit. Now, it's important to remember when passing the ball, you don't want to really predetermine your reads too much. If you determine that you're going to a receiver before the ball is snapped, you're going to end up throwing a lot more interceptions. It's important to focus on the short options first. If you've got a quick drag over the middle or a quick flat to the running back and it's open, just take it. It's good to just pick up the guaranteed easy 5 yards instead of holding the ball every play for too long, because that's when you open yourself up for mistakes. You want to get the ball out as quickly as possible to avoid sacks because the pass rush is good in the game and blocking isn't always the best. So you don't want to be hanging on to the ball longer than you have to. If your receiver's open for a quick few yards, just take it. You want to practice getting good at climbing the pocket. You don't want to drift backwards. Sometimes you may have to do this if it's a blitz, but typically you want to climb the pocket, and when you do this, you will find that you actually do have more time to pass than you think you do. Go in practice mode and just practice navigating the pocket, climbing around, and not being scared of the pass rush that sits in front of you. When you do this, you put less distance between you and the receiver, which makes the ball get there quicker, more accurately, and if running lanes open up for your quarterback, it's easy to recognize them and take off. If you drift back too much and try to throw, you're going to have a lot more inaccurate passes, the ball's going to take longer to get to your receivers, and you're going to open yourself up to more interceptions. And if you do take off and scramble, always remember to slide with your QB. You can do this by tapping the X button on Xbox or the square button on PlayStation. Don't take hits with your QB, it's just not worth it. Number 2, running 101. Let's talk about ball carrier moves first. If you want to juke, you can do that by flicking the right stick to the left or the right. This is the standard juke move, and it's going to work pretty good at faking out defenders. Now, if you want to do a more aggressive juke, you can do this by holding down the sprint button, which is the right trigger or the R2 button, while also flicking the joystick left or right. This is a more aggressive, faster juke move, and it's my favorite one. These moves can also be enhanced if your running back has the sidestep ability. This makes their jukes a lot crispier. To perform a spin move, you can press the B button on Xbox or the circle button on PlayStation. If you want to do the precision spin, you do this by holding down the right trigger or R2 button while also holding down the spin button. And if your running back has the 360 ability, this is going to make his spins even better. To perform a hurdle, you want to press the Y button on Xbox or the triangle button on PlayStation. I don't really like to use this too much, but it can be useful if somebody is trying to hit stick you low. And to stiff arm a defender, you hold down the A button on Xbox or the X button on PlayStation. Another important move to know is giving yourself up, because sometimes it's late in the game, or maybe you've built up a lot of wear and tear on your running back and you want to be safe. You can tap the X button on Xbox or the square button on PlayStation. Your ball carrier will give himself up and go down to the ground safely. And if you want to dive out for extra yards or dive for the pylon, you can hold down the X button or the square button all the way. And new to the game this year is a mechanic where you can manually stretch out the ball with your ball carrier if you're trying to reach for the first down of the pylon. If you're getting tackled or you're about to get tackled, you can hold up on the right stick and he will reach his arm forward, but remember, you can risk fumbling if you do this. And if you got one of those bigger backs and you want to truck, you will also use the right stick for this as well. If you're head up with a defender and you want to try to truck him, just flick the right stick up quickly and he'll lower the shoulder and try to run him over. Now, when running the ball, one of the most important things you need to learn is to not hold the sprint button behind the line of scrimmage. The sprint button is the right trigger or the R2 button. A lot of people get into a bad habit of holding this down the second they get the ball, but you don't want to do this because it does, in fact, make the defensive line block shed quicker. And it also just doesn't allow your offensive line enough time to set up the blocks. You want to get the ball and you want to simply just maneuver with the left stick. You only want to hold down the sprint button once you get into clear open field or if you're trying to pull away from a backside defender. But when navigating through the gaps that are set up by the offensive line, you do not want to be holding sprint when doing this. It's actually a lot easier if you just hold the left stick and move it left to right. Now, some run plays that are always going to be tried and true and can be found in every playbook. For under center formations, you can look at halfback dives and outside zones or stretch runs. These are always going to be very good in this game, and you can find them in pretty much any playbook. If you're in shotgun, some good basic runs can be an inside zone, a halfback base, a duo. These are some safe, simple inside runs that can pick up easy yards if the defense is not respecting it. And since this is college football, you also have to talk about the option. If you go to the concept tab in your playbook, go down to option, and then toggle over to the speed options, these are the easiest and best options to run in my opinion. When you take off running with the QB, you can pitch it to your running back by holding down the LB or L1 button. These are very hard for both the computer and the average player to defend. You can pick up very easy, consistent yards by using these. And if the defense does overcommit and play the running back, you can simply keep it with your quarterback. You do want to read this, but 9 times out of 10, they're usually going to crash down on the quarterback and you're going to want to pitch it to the running back. Hey, really quickly, I did want to let you know that I do offer a membership where I post all of my ebooks, my highest level offensive and defensive tips that will help you win a lot more games. And right now, for a limited time, you can get 40% off an annual membership with code CFB40. And if you rather do just a month-to-month membership, you can always get 50% off your first month to try it out with CFB50. Link is in the pinned comment below. Number 3, how to beat man defense. This is something that a lot of new players struggle with, and I will say in College Football 26, it seems like man defense is actually pretty solid this year, so you're going to need to know how to beat it. One route that always consistently works good against man defense is a Texas route or an angle route from your halfback. Now, some plays will come with this route stock, but you can also hot route it. When you're on the field, you press the Y or triangle button, select your running back icon, and then up on the D-pad. Usually, it's going to be a linebacker or maybe a safety manned up to your running back, and if you have a decent running back with some decent speed, he's going to usually cook the defender the majority of the time. My favorite route versus man is going to be the zig route. You can hot route any wide receiver to this by pressing Y or triangle, selecting their icon, and then looking on the chart to see which option is the zig route. This can be different depending on which side of the field you're on, but you're going to want to get familiar with the zig route because this is by far the best man beating route every year in the game, and the better your receiver is, the better they're going to cook on this route. Another tried and true route will be the slant route. You press Y or triangle, select the receiver icon, and then select the slant option on your hot route chart. This will also be different depending on which side of the field you're on. And if you've got a decent route runner, you should beat the man defender the majority of the time with this. Number 4, how to beat zone defense. So I'm going to tell you some basic ways here that you can beat typical zone defenses that you'll face, like cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. One of the best ways to do this every year is a flood concept. So basically what you're going to want to have is 3 receivers on one side of the field. They can either be bunched together or they can be spread out in a trips. Typically, I like them bunched together because this is just a little bit easier to work with. And you're going to want a streak on your outside receiver, a corner route on your inside receiver, and a flat on the other receiver, or usually your tight end. What you're going to look for with this is you're going to look for the flat route or the corner route. The streak is going to pull zones deep, and then you're just going to play the 2-man high-low game between the corner or the flat. One of these will typically be open. Either you're going to check it down to the flat for an easy 5+ yards, or you're going to hit the corner route over the top if the defense is playing aggressive for some big yards. Some other options that can work good against zone are using some gimmicky plays like the jet touch passes. Pretty much every playbook is going to have these. These aren't as good as they were last year, but they can still be usable. You can also use things like halfback screens as well. Screens are going to typically be really good against zone coverages. Number 5, Defense 101. The first thing you're going to want to pay attention to is matching personnel. However many receivers your opponent comes out in, you want the proper amount of cornerbacks to match because you want to match speed on speed. You don't want a linebacker defending a receiver. That's a big mismatch. So you never want to pick your defensive play before your opponent picks his offensive play, because once the offensive play is picked, a little box will pop up on the screen and it will tell you their personnel. So if their personnel says that they have 2 wide receivers, typically that means they might be running the ball, they might be under center more likely. So you want to use a formation like a 4-3, a 3-4, a 5-2, a 4-4, or a 4-2-5. These are going to put more linebackers on the field to help defend against the run, and you still will have 2 cornerbacks on the field to defend the 2 wide receivers. If they're coming out in a 3 wide receiver set, you want to typically come out in some type of a nickel formation, because nickel is going to give you a nickel back, which is a 3rd cornerback. If they're coming out in a 4 wide receiver set, you're going to want to pick a dime or a dollar defense, because that's going to give you 4 cornerbacks on your defense to match the 4 wide receivers. Now, here are some beginner-friendly coverages that you can use on defense. For this year especially, you're going to want to look at cover 2 man. This is going to be the safest coverage you can run. Everybody's going to be manned up across the board, and you're going to have 2 deep safeties to help prevent against the deep pass. Especially if you pick a team that has a really good defensive line, you can be pretty successful using this year, because the average person is not going to be able to beat man defense that easily, and the pass rush is going to be good enough to where if the ball's not coming out quick, they're going to get sacked, or they're going to force throws and give you opportunities to get interceptions. For zone coverage, you're going to want to look at Tampa 2. This is a cover 2 zone. This is going to kind of help keep a lot of stuff in front of you so that they have to take little dump down passes where you could come up, make tackles, make hit sticks, inflict wear and tear damage on their offense, and try to force them into throwing into tighter windows deep. Cover 3 sky or cover 3 hard flat is also going to be another good option. It's pretty safe because it gives you 3 deep zones, so it's hard to beat over the top. This is going to force the defense to once again either kind of dink and dunk or go over the short middle, which again, you want to rally down at that point, make tackles, make hits, and inflict wear and tear. As a beginner, you can cycle between these 3 types of coverages and be pretty good against the average opponent. But if you find that one of these coverages in particular is giving your opponent a harder time than the other ones, then you might want to stick in that one predominantly. Number 6, how to blitz. So as a beginner, the easiest way for you to blitz is to use cover 0 man blitzes. Now these are high risk, high reward. You could get beat for huge gains or give up a huge touchdown, but you will also get quick pressure on the quarterback, and there's a lot of people that just simply struggle against this. So what you're going to want to do is go in your playbook, you're going to want to tab over to the concept section, you're going to want to go down to man blitz, and what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to look at the different types of man blitzes. You're going to want to pick a play that has 6 red arrows on it. Now, what you're going to want to do when you call these plays is you're going to want to take the safety that is manned up on the running back, and you want to watch for the running back. If he goes out on a route, he's your responsibility. Usually the running back goes out into the flat. You're going to want to just follow him and defend him. If the running back stays in the block, then what you do is you stay over the middle with your safety and just try to play a robber roll. Try to stay over the middle and see if you can bait an interception. But by having 6 people rushing the quarterback, if your opponent does not leave in an extra blocker like a running back or tight end, if he sends everybody out, somebody is going to come free instantly because you have 6 rushers versus 5 offensive linemen. You have an extra guy there that can't be accounted for. So if you use those coverages we talked about and then occasionally mix in a 6-man blitz, you can have a lot of success. And on the flip side, if somebody is hitting you with these type of blitzes, the best thing you could do is simply block your running back. You do this by pressing Y or triangle, selecting the running back icon, and then pressing the right trigger or R2 button. Now you have an extra blocker in. 6 versus 6, you should pick up the pressure at least momentarily and have a chance to get the pass off. Number 7, learn the abilities. This is one of the most important things in college football. There's a ton of abilities. Every team is going to have players that have abilities, and these can significantly enhance your players. So you're going to want to go to the main menu, go to the ability tab, scroll through, read them all, know what they do, and then see who has what on the teams that you like to use. For example, players that have the shifty ability are going to be able to stop on a dime and cut a lot quicker. They're going to be a lot harder to tackle, and they're easier to change direction with in the open field. field. Running abilities like sidestep and 360, which we talked about earlier, are going to give you better juke and spin moves to fake out more defenders. There's a ton of different quarterback abilities. Some of them make them more accurate, for example. There's also abilities on defense that can help people shed blocks quicker, or blanket coverage for a cornerback, which makes him much better in man defense. So if you like running man defense, try to find a team that has 1 or 2 blanket coverage corners, and you're going to have even better man defense than somebody that doesn't have it. Number 8, accident prevention. This right here can win or lose you games, and it gets overlooked by a lot of players. One example of this we talked about earlier, which is sliding with your quarterback. Again, if you're running with him, if you're scrambling, you're in the open field, you don't want to take hits because quarterbacks get injured easier and they fumble more often. So you're going to want to tap the X button or the square button to slide, and you're going to want to give yourself about 5 yards of space between you and your defender to do this. If you wait a little too late to try to slide, you're going to wind up getting hit by the defender. So you want to keep a good distance. You don't want to be greedy. Either get out of bounds with your QB or slide when you get within 5 yards of the nearest defender. Another one we just talked about was blocking your running back versus the blitz. A lot of players like to send basic 6-man blitzes like I just talked about earlier. The reason they do that is because a lot of people don't want to block their running back. They don't want to take the extra step that prevents the blitz from getting in. So again, to block your running back, you press Y or triangle, select the running back icon, and then press right trigger or R2. If someone is sending a lot of pressure at you, you want to make sure that you're consistently blocking your running back. That's going to give you more time to pass. Another part of accident prevention for me is not allowing people to easily scramble every play with QBs. This is something that a lot of players like to do. They get a fast QB and they want to run around and they want to scramble every play. So what you're going to want to do if you're playing against one of these QBs, or you're playing against someone that likes to scramble for the bailout, put a defender in a QB spy. You can do this by taking an edge rusher or one of your faster linebackers. You press A or X depending on your system, and then left on the right stick. Now that player will follow the QB around every play. That is all he's going to worry about is the QB. And if he tries to take off and run, that player is going to be right there to limit him or maybe even cause a fumble. And another part of accident prevention this year is monitoring your wear and tear with the new on-the-fly substitutions feature. When you're on the field, you can press up on the D-pad and it'll bring up a substitution menu. But in this menu, you can look at your players and you can see if they're suffering any wear and tear damage. You can see if their overall is a little bit lower right now because you've been using them a lot. And then you can go to that player, scroll on the D-pad, and swap him out. For example, you can take your running back out and put the backup in for a few plays. And then on the next play you come out, your backup will be in until you change this back to the starter. You're going to want to monitor this because as your players accrue wear and tear over the game, they become slower, their ratings go down until they replenish some of that health, their stamina goes down, and they become more at risk of injury. So make sure you're always swapping the right players out to keep them fresh. Number 9, how to audible. This is something you can use to really keep your opponents on their heels. When you're on the field, you press the X button on Xbox or the square button on PlayStation, and then you can use the D-pad to scroll left or right through different formations. You can audible into any formation in your playbook that has the same personnel that you're currently on the field with. So you can come out in one formation, change to a new one, and this will keep your opponents guessing. Another part of audibling is flipping your play. Sometimes you'll come out in your play to one side of the field, but you decide you want to flip it and run it to the opposite side of the field. Maybe because you notice there's more room over there, or maybe because the defense lines up in a certain way that leaves it open. So to do this, you press the X or square button once again, and then you're going to press right trigger or R2. This will flip your formation. And if you want to reset everything back to the original play, you press X or square and then the left trigger or L2 button to reset back to the original formation. To take audibling a step further, in your playbook, when you open up a formation, you can press the left trigger or L2 button, and you can actually customize your audibles for that formation. So if you don't like the audibles that are in there, or you don't like one of them in particular, you can take that play out and swap it for a play you like better. So now when you're on the field, you have more plays that you're familiar with at your disposal. Number 10, learn how to scheme. This is one of those things that will take your game to a higher level. You don't want to just come out and run one play or run two plays all game long. Now, hey, don't get me wrong. Some people are good enough where they can kind of do that, or sometimes your opponent's bad enough where you can do that. But if you're playing someone that's a little bit more advanced, you're going to want to keep them guessing. So the best way to scheme is to find a formation that you like, and you want to find multiple plays in that formation that attack different parts of the field, so that your opponent is never quite sure which play you're going to run. So you might have a play that you really like that attacks the right side of the field. Well, find Find another play in that formation that you like that can attack the left side. Find a good run play out of that formation so that you can keep the defense honest versus the run. Find a play action play that also looks like the run, so when you go to fake the handoff, the defense thinks you're running the ball, but actually you're pulling it back and now it's a play action. Mix in screen plays, jet sweeps, options if you have those available. Because certain formations you can come out in and have all these different things available, and if you're constantly switching between these plays, your opponent will never know what's coming, and it gets harder for them to get a read on what you're trying to do. Now that you know about all the best beginner tips, you're halfway there. Next, you'll need to check out the best playbooks in the game where you can find some of these great plays, and you can find that video right here on the screen.